Hello and welcome to the training tutorial for the Mobile Application Rating Scale, the MARS, developed at Queensland University of Technology, Brisbane, Australia, by a multidisciplinary team of researchers, psychologists, IT professionals, and software developers with the help of the Young and Well Cooperative Research Centre. At this training, I'll give you a little background for the development of the scale, and we'll talk in detail about the scale, its items, how to use its scoring components, and we'll do a training exercise. The reason why we felt the need to develop the MARS was because our team is actively involved in the development of mobile applications for mental health and well-being. When we went to research the existing apps, we wanted to quantify our experience with those apps so that we could justify why we think that an app is necessary in a certain area of development. The classic app ratings that we found were the standard iTunes and Google Play available star ratings for users, which are oftentimes unreliable. Therefore, it's impossible to include those in an actual report. We explored published literature to see if there is an existing app rating scale that could give us objective ratings of apps and that could also be thorough enough so that it looked at all different components of the apps. But we couldn't find one, so that's why we felt the need to develop one ourselves. The MARS has a total of 7 components. The first one is a classification section designed to allow researchers to give a better categorization of the apps than the ones that already exist in iTunes or Google Play. Oftentimes we can see that apps are grouped under meaningless categories, at least in terms of research. That's why we've tried proposing some categories that could be a little bit more useful to researchers. Thereafter come the 23 rating items, organized in 5 different subscales of engagement, functionality, aesthetics, information, and subjective quality. The 7th MARS component is the optional app-specific subscale. It contains items exploring the rater's opinion of the app's potential to increase awareness and knowledge, or to elicit attitude change or behavior change. In order to test the reliability of the scale, 2 researchers explored in detail and rated 50 apps, which helped us determine that the scale had very high internal consistency, and the intra-class correlation coefficient was calculated to be at 0.85, which suggested that the scale had very high inter-rater reliability. These results suggest that the scale can be reliably and objectively used even by a single rater, although calculating the mean score of 2 raters would of course mean even more reliable and objective ratings. In terms of classification, these are some of the proposed categories that we use in our research. Of course, as an expert in the area of apps that you're researching, you're welcome to expand or reduce those categories or change them. What we've tried to provide are some guidelines of the type of research that we're interested in and the type of approaches that different apps use in terms of health, mental health, and well-being. But for best reporting purposes, it's important that you devise the categories that are most convenient or relevant to you. Moving on to the app quality ratings. We've used the 5-point rating scale, and we've tried to mimic the existing 5-star ratings that are already available and widely popular in app stores. We've tried to use the acceptable medium level as the common ground for most apps that are working okay without any problems. Going down to poor and inadequate means that some important components are missing. Going up to 4 and 5 as in good or excellent means that something extra has been done by the developers to promote better use of the app and better user experience. What we're trying to look for is that the apps are engaging and not boring, that they work properly, that they're designed professionally to increase engagement and aesthetics of the app, and that the information contained within them is actually of high quality and capable of providing support. Now we'll look at the items in the engagement subscale. First one of those items is entertainment. It looks at whether or not the app is engaging, if it's fun enough to use. If it uses extra components such as gamification, fun graphics, fun videos, or all kinds of different activities that could increase the entertainment component of the app. The next item of the MARS talks about interest, or how interesting the app is to use. Does it use any strategies to increase engagement by presenting the content in an interesting way? And this is a very good example what you see on the screen. On the left hand side you see, albeit very relevant and important information presented in a textbook format. On the right hand side you see little engaging videos explaining mindfulness within the Headspace app, which are definitely a lot more interesting than the plain text you see on the left. In order to be able to better distinguish between fun and interesting, I'd like to give you the following example. A documentary on the Discovery Channel about a disease, say cancer, might be very interesting, albeit not so much fun. Customization is the next item of the MARS. That item explores whether or not the app can be tailored and modified to best suit the user's preferences. Generally speaking, the majority of apps provide some sort of simple settings such as sound or color customization, timers, alarms, and others. That's why this item can be used as a perfect example for using the rating of 3 as a standard rating score. There are apps, however, which go the extra mile of providing extra settings which are not essential for the basic functioning of the app, but are yet wonderful additional customization options which can be used to justify a rating of 4 or even 5 depending on their variety. The fourth MARS item explores interactivity. To be able to make a distinction between interactivity and customization, please regard customization as settings and interactivity as features. From the example apps that you see on the screen, the app on the left-hand side, Mood Shuffle, claims to play music on the basis of mood. This is a rather interactive feature, however, it doesn't work. The app simply plays the music library at random. The app on the right-hand side, Map My Run, provides a variety of features. It has an in-app community, allows sharing with other users, has nutrition information, and numerous other options. All these features increase the app's engagement by allowing the user to select the options that they like the most. It's important for the app to allow the customization of those features, because if the app has the interactive feature of sending feedback reminders, they might be coming at a wrong time, so the user should be able to customize those. The target group item was something we added in reference to the research that we're doing in our team. We mainly target apps at 16 to 25-year-old users. That doesn't mean that the app needs to be specifically designed for the target group that you're interested in. What's more important is whether or not it's suitable for the target group that you're interested in. For example, an app with complex language like the first example on the left would not be usable for young people because its complexity will make it non-engaging. Presenting information again in a relevant way to the target group of your research would make that app properly targeted. Again, here is an example. I'm using the Facebook app as the middle ground, which is designed to be appropriately used by any generation. If though you're doing a research on a certain group, let's say autistic children, then you'd need to look whether or not the apps you're exploring are relevant for them. The next MARS subscale is functionality. It has 4 items, looking at performance, which is whether or not the app works, ease of use, as in how easy is it to learn how to use the app, navigation, once we've learned how to use the app, how easy is it to navigate around it, and finally gestural design, whether or not the gestures used in the app make sense, such as double taps, left swipes, right swipes, double clicks, triple clicks, and so on. In terms of performance, what we're looking at is prompt, timely response of different features and buttons. As our middle ground anchor, we're using that the app works overall. That would give it a rating of 3. There might be some technical problems that could need fixing, or it could be slow at times, but in general it works okay. If the problems are really negligible, then we would give it a rating of 4. And if there are no problems found whatsoever, or bugs, or delay of use, then we would give it a rating of 5. Probably many of you have had the experience of downloading an app and really struggling to find out how to use it. Sometimes apps don't even provide the appropriate tutorials for their use. That's why this item aims to look at how intuitive the app is. Some apps are naturally intuitive, such as the music player, for example. We all know what the play button is, what the fast forward and the rewind buttons are. In general, we're looking at apps that are as intuitive as possible. If not, a rating of 4 would mean that if they're not perfectly intuitive, they still have a very solid tutorial. A rating of 3 would mean that the app is easy to learn how to use, but it does take a little bit of time. Going down to a rating of 2 means that the app is quite difficult to figure out whether or not it has a tutorial. And a rating of 1 means that it's practically impossible to figure out how to use the app. We've also had a problem with the navigation of apps. Sometimes apps don't even allow for the proper access, like the one example on the screen. There is no register button, there is a direct login button. So this app in itself cannot be accessed unless it's been linked to an account elsewhere, which we're not aware of. The reason why there could be problems with navigation is not just problem of access, but also missing buttons, missing links. Oftentimes we think, how difficult is it to get to our inbox, for example? Or how hard is it to go back to the initial screen and redo everything we've done so far? Sometimes apps miss those important components and links between screens, so that item tries to measure that. A perfectly logical navigation makes perfect sense, and that would give it a rating of 5. It needs to be clear, intuitive, and it should offer shortcuts. In terms of gestural design, the development of apps in any area provides the opportunity for expanding the use of gestures within the app. Double taps, pinches, and swipes are quite popular, but gestures such as triple tap, for example, might not make much sense. So therefore, if there are any gestures that are not intuitive and already in common use, they need to be explained within the tutorial, and they would still not be classified as a rating of 5. Most likely, if there are some problematic gestures that are explained, the rating that they should receive is a 4. Mostly consistent and intuitive, but with some negligible problems, or negligible additions that are explained in the tutorial. There might also be hidden gestures such as holding down a button to open up a new menu, but those need to be rather intuitive for the app to get a rating of 5, or well explained so that the app could get a rating of 4 on the item of gestural design. The next subscale of the Mars looks at aesthetics. We know that it's very difficult to judge aesthetics objectively, so we've tried to reduce it to the minimum of 3 items that could provide us with objective criteria of app rating. The layout item looks at the button and menu arrangement of each screen of the app, whether or not the buttons are accessible, easy to touch, and yet they don't create clutter by being too big. In terms of quality of the graphics of the app, we're looking mainly at the resolution, but also the professionalism of the app design. On the left-hand side, you can see an example of a poorly designed app, mainly because of the bad resolution of the graphic, but also because of the poor design. On the right-hand side, you see an example of high-resolution graphics with beautifully designed buttons and a great menu. The highest quality graphics often leave us with a sense of innovation. The third aesthetics item refers to visual appeal, and this mostly looks at the color choice of the app, whether or not the color scheme is appealing, but also just the overall sense that the app leaves the user with, if the app is memorable and stands out amongst the rest. In the information section of the Mars, we're looking at the app content, whether it's written text and its amount and quality, whether it's videos. Also, we look at the app description, credibility of the source, and whether the app has been tested for efficacy. The information section requires the expertise of the professional, knowledgeable about the area of the app that's being researched. So it's important that when we're looking at health apps, it's health professionals looking at the content, if the quality and the quantity of the information is adequate and substantial to achieve its goals. The first item to look at is the app description on the App Store. Often descriptions might be misleading. They could make promises that the app is actually not capable to achieve. An excellent app description should contain quality information about the app, honestly listing and explaining its components, as well as who developed it and where users can reach support if they have any problems. The next item, goals, explores what goals the app has set and if it contains the proper components to achieve them. As you can see on the example on the left-hand side, this app is aiming to teach everything about happiness which is obviously an impossible goal, or even if it were a possible goal, it cannot be achieved with the content of the app, which is just one lecture. On the right-hand side, however, an app called Recovery Road sets a goal for itself to support people with eating disorders. As you can see, there's a variety of techniques and approaches that the app uses in order to achieve that goal, so it has a high chance of achieving the goal listed in description. On the other hand, there could be apps that list goals that are irrelevant to our research. For example, we could be using a game for teaching purposes. That doesn't mean that the game was strictly designed for teaching purposes, but we're repurposing its goals. In that sense, it depends on the type of research that you're interested in. We shouldn't, of course, give a low rating to apps that have goals that are irrelevant to our research if we're doing an objective rating that we're then going to report. On the other hand, if we're only doing the rating for our purposes and trying to find out the most appropriate apps for our research, maybe we would then give this app a low rating just so that we don't choose it as one of our finalists or one of the apps that are planning to implement for our purposes. This is the first item that allows for the rater to actually select an NA option, whether it's that the item is irrelevant to the rater, or the app doesn't list any goals, or the goals are irrelevant to our research. We can simply select that option, which would then eliminate the item from the mean rating of the subscale. The other thing to keep in mind for this item is that a standard level rating of 3 would mean that the app has listed clear goals and they may be achievable. A level 4 means that the app has clearly defined goals which are measurable and achievable, so progress can actually be monitored. And the best rating of 5 means that the goals are specific and measurable and are quite likely to be achieved because of the components included in the app. The quality of information item is one that it's important to be rated by a specialist. Here in the example on the screen, you can see on the left-hand side an app aiming to promote happiness, and on the right-hand side an app aiming to explain emotion regulation. While this might be a boring way of presenting information, that still doesn't mean that it's of a low quality. The information quality item needs to be rated by an expert, a person capable to decide whether the information that the app is trying to provide is actually relevant, competent, appropriate, and not in any way potentially harmful to its users. There's a growing body of research that advocates for the quality control of the information contained within the apps for that sole purpose, in order to avoid the possibility that the app is potentially harmful to its users. And while in the previous item we were looking for the quality of information, in this item we're looking at the quantity. Once again, the rater needs to look at whether or not the amount of information contained within the app is actually appropriate. While on the left-hand side you see the example of a single lecture aiming to provide all information there is to know about happiness, on the right-hand side you see a perfect example of what we call expandable information. Each one of those boxes is actually expandable and provides a new level of detail. The best rating apps for this item also provide external links which allow users to go beyond the scope of the app to find additional information. The next item explores visual information. While sometimes apps use graphs, pie charts, tables, and others to provide and explain information, many times they might actually be very difficult to read. As you can see on the example on the left-hand side, the graph on top is actually very difficult to read. It's quite hard to understand what the different colors are, what the different levels are, and there needs to be an extensive explanation to the user of how they should read this graph. On the other side, visually presenting the information that could have well been just a written text by the great little videos that the Headspace app is using makes information about meditation simple and clear. It's important to note here that this item might be not applicable to many apps, as they may not necessarily contain visual representation of concepts. In that sense, a simple video lecture would not be considered a visual presentation of information, for the simple reason that there's no translation or representation of components and concepts that could otherwise just be presented as a written text. For the next item, we'll need to look who provided the information contained within the app, and whether or not they're the expert in the field who have the capacity and authority to provide relevant, quality information. Most commonly, apps are designed by developers with commercial purposes, and that's okay, but such apps would rate a 3 on this item. This means that they don't necessarily have the strict expertise for the information that they're providing. If they provide relevant sources of the information, then this could increase their rating to a level of 4 or even 5. But for the most part, developers of high quality information apps, albeit not high quality entertainment apps, are institutions such as universities or even government authorities developing apps based on extensive, rigorous research. The following Mars item, evidence base, is still mostly inapplicable to the majority of apps to date, because many apps don't actually aim to explore their effectiveness outside of user feedback. With the increase of the popularity of this area and the increase of e-health and m-health research, app effectiveness is being more widely researched. That's why it's important to see if there's any published information regarding the effectiveness of the app, whether or not any randomized controlled trials have been designed and implemented to explore the app's effectiveness. The next subscale looks at the subjective quality of the app. This lists several components that might be a little bit more relevant to the subjective views of the rater, yet aiming to provide objective anchors to give them a better guideline for objectifying the subjective ratings. The first item of the subjective subscale looks at whether or not the rater would recommend the app to others who might benefit from it. So while the rater may not recommend the app Recovery Road that targets eating disorders to everyone, it's important to know if the rater would be confident in recommending the app to people with eating disorders who might actually benefit from it. In this sense, a rating of 5 on this item means that the rater is confident that the app is capable of increasing the well-being of its potential user. For the next item, item number 21, it's important for the raters to put themselves in the shoes of the potential users and to think if the app would actually prompt continuous use or it will just be used several times to deliver a message before it becomes repetitive and ends up deleted. Item number 22 asks if the app is good enough that it's worth paying for. You may have noticed that some of the best apps out there are actually free. So this is not a question if the price of the app seems reasonable, but rather given the quality of the app, is it worth paying for? As a final item of the Mars scale, we've included the standard star rating that we would give to any app on any of the app stores. We're just interested in seeing if the star rating that the rater would give reflects the actual details of the Mars scale overall. What we found was very interesting that the 23rd Mars item, or the individual subjective star rating of the rater, actually highly correlates with the mean score of the rest of the scale. As a result of testing the Mars, we added one more additional subscale. While these items are optional, they're aiming to explore the perceived impact of the app on the user's knowledge, attitude, intentions to change, as well as the likelihood of the actual change in the target health behavior. Researchers are welcome to modify and adjust these items to best fit their needs. They are once again designed to serve as a bit of a guideline similarly to the classification scale of the Mars. For scoring purposes and achieving one final result of the quality of the app overall, we calculate the mean scores of each of the 4 first subscales. Those are engagement, functionality, aesthetics, and information. Please be mindful that when computing the mean score of the information subscales, you need to exclude the NA items from the mean score. Then we calculate one overall mean score of app quality. We report the subjective and app-specific subscales separately, and it's up to the rater's discretion to decide whether or not to report those items individually or as mean scores for those 2 subscales. These are some guidelines that we'd like to recommend to you to try before starting an actual rating process. It's great to try and use the Mars on several apps that are not part of your final dataset. It's also great to use this training tutorial and utilize the following training exercise. In our team, we found it very helpful when 2 raters rated several apps and reconvene again to discuss if concepts within the scale or certain items and anchors have the same meaning to each rater. Additionally, providing 2 individual ratings for each of the apps ultimately allows for an even more objective final rating. And now we're going to proceed with the Mars app rating exercise. For that purpose, we ask you to please download the Happier app. You can find it both on the Apple App Store or on the Android Google Store. After exploring the app in detail for at least 10 minutes, we ask you to proceed with the exercise. For the first Mars item, entertainment, we'll see if the app uses any components that make it more fun or entertaining to use. The app actually has several components aimed at making it more entertaining. Information is presented by various means, as written text, as audio, and video. There are also daily challenges, which themselves are gamification components. And the only reason why we wouldn't give this app a rating of 5 on this item is the fact that neither the gamification components nor the videos themselves are actually entertaining enough. As a comparison, we can see much more entertaining videos in the Headspace app. For the next item, interest, as we spoke earlier, we're going to look at the way the app presents its information. We suggest a rating of 5 for this item. The reason for that is that the app attempts to present its content in an interesting way. It provides personal stories in the videos. It divides the app content into neat, relevant categories that might spark up users' interest even further. For example, people may never have considered that their body has an effect on their happiness. For the third Mars item, customization, we explored the app in detail and we found that actually it doesn't provide any customization options whatsoever. That's why a rating of 1 is appropriate for this item. For the next Mars item, interactivity, we're going to look at what components the app contains that increase engagement. The app does offer a variety of features. The only problem we found was that once we signed up for the notifications, we could not edit how often we were going to receive them. There was actually no settings option within the app that allowed us to manage those notifications. And as we've experienced with other apps, those reminders could actually be coming at rather inconvenient times. That's why it's important to be able to customize those notifications to receive a rating of 5. But still, a rating of 4 due to the variety of features presented in the app seems appropriate. For the next item, target group, don't forget to consider your target group. For the training purposes, let's consider a couple of options. It's relatively obvious that the information and graphics might be targeting an audience of 18 or older. That's why if we have a target audience of children, the app would be rated as a 3. The content is acceptable, but not targeted for children. It might be a bit difficult to comprehend at times, or even confusing to them. If, however, our target group was anyone in their early or late adulthood, the app could be considered as perfectly targeted. So a rating of 5 in that case would be relevant. To be able to answer the item about performance, we need to literally try all buttons, screens, and menus of the app. This way we can be confident if there are any bugs or any problems found within it. In this case, we weren't able to find any issues, therefore our rating of the app's performance is 5. How easy is the app to use? The app is really straightforward. It provides several free exercises, some paid ones, and a community for support. While it's not immediately clear how to use it, there are clear instructions which help you find your way around the app with ease. In terms of navigation, we're looking at how easy is it to move around the app if all expected links, buttons, and connections are present. And you can see that there are several navigation options, a menu on the bottom, a couple of other options for navigation on top. Now, while those spread out navigation panes might be a little bit confusing, they would probably be considered as a negligible problem, and therefore would receive a rating of 4. We did, however, find another problem. Once we start playing an audio lecture and leave that screen, it is actually impossible to pause or stop the lecture. In fact, if you move on and start playing a video lecture at the same time, both will play simultaneously without you being able to pause or stop the audio lecture. This is a more serious issue and requires more time and effort to use the app. Therefore, a rating of 3 seems more reasonable and appropriate for this item. For the item gestural design, exploring what types of taps, swipes, and pinches are necessary to use the app, we did not find any problems. In fact, the only gesture the app uses is taps. There are no swipes or double taps or pinches, so in that sense, gestures are considered to be intuitive and would receive a rating of 5. Moving on to the aesthetic subscale of the Mars, the first item looks at the app's layout. We believe that the app looks very well organized. The screens are optimized and the size of the buttons and text is appropriate. So again, we believe that a rating of 5 is fair for this item. For the next item, we're going to look at the app's graphics. That includes buttons, icons, menus, and all the rest of the content of the app. We are looking for professional, high quality, high resolution, and consistent design. While we believe that the app is professionally designed, we are going to attempt to rate it as objectively as possible. Therefore, we should not neglect an issue that we came across. If you look at the About Our Courses information on the screens, the design between those two screens is different even though the information is the same. While this is a potentially negligible problem and we wouldn't have necessarily rated it down, we couldn't help but notice that behind some of this text, more information is to be expected. What does 100% satisfaction guarantee mean, for example? And while this is not a design issue, the design problem here is that the left example actually reminds of buttons, which we tried pressing, hoping to find out additional information about those details. Yet, of course, we found that those are not buttons. Therefore, this slight problem in design should be addressed by rating this item as 4, because in fact the app is mostly stylistically consistent. The last one of the aesthetics items, overall visual appeal, asks the question, how good does the app look? We believe we can all agree that the app looks professionally and well designed and overall consistent. While we wouldn't say that this is one of the most memorable apps we've seen, we also think that it's better than the average ones. Therefore, a rating of 4 seems like the most appropriate choice. For the first item on the information scale, we will explore the app's description. From what we see, it talks about the focus of the app, aiming to let users discover, create, and share small moments of their daily life. It also lists the 3 components of the app: the ability to log your own happy moments, the short audio and video courses, as well as the ability to connect with an in-app community of other users of the app. Therefore, we regard the description as highly accurate and would give it a rating of 5. For the next item, goals, we need to identify what goals the app sets for itself. In this case, thankfully, it is rather easy, because the name itself makes the goals clear. That is, to make its users happier. It aims to do so mainly by prompting them to discover, create, and share small moments of appreciation in their daily life. As research has shown, gratitude and appreciation are linked to increased happiness. So is mindfulness and meditation, and so is social support. In that sense, the app has specific goals. There are, of course, various scales and inventories allowing us to measure subjective happiness. Therefore, this is a measurable goal. And finally, it seems like the components the app has included, if properly applied, should be capable of achieving the app's goal. Therefore, a rating of 5 is also appropriate for this item. For the information quality item, we explored all the included information. We suggest you do the same, and if you agree with us, we believe that the information is highly relevant, appropriate, coherent, and correct. So we gave it a rating of 5. As we mentioned in the training tutorial, the key component for rating quantity of the information is to explore if the information is minimal or overwhelming, and it's best if the information is actually expendable. So as we can see, there is definitely a variety of information provided within the app. It also certainly is expendable. Not only can users watch, listen, and read about how to become happier, but also if they like, they can purchase additional courses. The only thing we've seen that some other apps do a little bit better is to provide even external links to additional information resources. Some apps recommend websites or published material. If such links were present, the quantity of information item would have been rated as 5. In this case, because those external links are missing, we would give it a rating of 4. So for the next item, we would rate the visual presentation of information. We didn't see any graphs or charts or other visual components which required interpretation. What about the videos? If you have seen several of those, you must have noticed that the visual component doesn't actually work to aid understanding of happiness. No information is in any way interpreted or explained visually. Therefore, we can select the NA option for this item. To be able to answer the question about credibility, we explored the website of the app. As there is no detailed description of the qualifications of the team and we would expect to see at least one psychologist on that team, we cannot guarantee the expertise of those who have provided the information within the app. We can, though, easily see that the app has not been developed by an university or a government. It seems to be developed by a specialized commercial business. If we are able, based on a little further research, to find out if there are psychologists in the team, we could probably easily give the app a rating of 3. If, however, we are unable to find that information, then a rating of 2 might seem a little bit more appropriate, because the app seems to come from a legitimate source, but it cannot be verified. For the evidence-based item, we will log into Google Scholar and search if any research has been done to explore the effectiveness of the app. Truly, searching for happier wouldn't return any relevant results. That's why in our case we search for the search terms appearing on the right hand side of the screen. In this case, once again, just like it is with most other apps, we found no relevant research conducted on the effectiveness of this app. That's why the NA option should be selected. For these couple of items, we leave the answer to your discretion. We provide our answers just for reference. The same is true about the final 2 Mars items. Once again, please find our answers here. Now that we're finished with the rating, you're welcome to use the guidelines listed earlier in the training and calculate one final Mars rating of the quality of the Happier app. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for using the Mars. And if you have any questions or if you require further information or collaboration, please get in touch. These are our emails. Associate Professor Dr. Leanne Hides is the leader of this project. And my name is Stoyan Stoyanov, and I'm the research officer involved in the development of the Mars. Thank you.